Hello and welcome to our History of Philosophy course. This is the class 0, the first class. And before starting, I wanted to talk about some things. I want to give some disclaimers about the course and about what I pretend with it. This is going to be a long course. I want to give lots of classes since you're going to see in the third topic the material that I'm using as a base is very long and I want to explain it. I want to revise it for myself too. I think it's going to help me on my studies too. And except for this class, I pretend giving classes about an hour long. Except for this one, since that's the class 0, I just want to introduce the subject, and this one is not about it's not actually a part of the course, so it's going to be shorter. And the first thing I want to say is that I want to talk about philosophy, about what is philosophy. I want to define it, and I don't care about giving a exact definition, a categorical definition, a perfect definition. I need a practical definition for us to see what is a theologist, what is a philosopher, what is an artist, what is a philosopher, what is a scientist, and what is a philosopher. So then we can understand the topic that we're going to study in the course. That are the philosophers, the history of philosophy, not the history of any other thing that is not philosophy. And for that, we need at least two elements. I'm going to explain a little bit about definitions. Definitions need two elements. We cannot define something just with one characteristic. If I say that God is perfect, I'm just pointing one characteristic of God and not defining God. For a definition, I needed to say that God is a perfect being. Then I have a definition. Now I have the beings, the group of beings, and the beings that are perfect. This is God. In this case, there is just one. The being that is perfect is God. And for a good definition, we need sufficient and required characteristics of the thing that we are defining. What do I mean with that? Let's suppose that I want to define human being. If I say that humans are animals with an opposable thumb, that's a bad definition. Since, okay, every animal with an opposable thumb is a human being. Okay, you got a sufficient characteristic of human beings, a sufficient definition. But this definition is not required. You don't need to have opposable thumbs to be a human. We can have an animal without an opposable thumb that is a human too. As an example, if I get a knife and cut my thumbs, both of my thumbs, I'll still be a human, but I will be an animal without opposable thumbs. So this definition just talks about some human beings, and we want to talk about all human beings. So it's not a good definition because it's just sufficient, but it's not required. Another bad definition is animal with a nervous system. Okay, now you have a required definition. If I get my nervous system out of me, I am no longer a human being. For someone to be a human being, it's required, it's necessary to have a nervous system. But in this case, it's not sufficient, since we can have animals with nervous systems that are not human beings. We have cats, we have dogs, we have cows, and a lot of animals with nervous system that are not human beings. So that's how we're going to define philosophy. That's how we want it to be. We want a sufficient and a required definition of philosophy. And for that, I'm using the definition of Desidério Murcho. that is a professor here in Brazil, and he says that philosophy is a study area that analyzes problems without a procedure that creates a rational consensus. What do I mean with that? I mean that philosophy is a study area. So that's what makes it different from art, for an example. An artist is not someone that studies love. Is someone that A poet is not someone that studies love. Is someone that talks about love. You don't need to be a scholar on that to be a poet or to be a painter or anything. You don't need to study. So a philosopher, no, a philosopher is an academic, is a student, but a student of one specific type of thing. I put here area based on arguments, debates, and concepts, since for us to understand that is not everything that you can do in philosophy. Philosophy is based on arguments, is based on public debates, is based on actually trying to discover, is based on studying. It's a study area that analyzes problem without a procedure that creates a rational consensus. What do I mean with that? If we get a math problem, I'm going to use a very simple one. How much is 2 plus 3? 2 plus 3, I need just 2. Rise 2 of my fingers up, then rise 3 of my fingers. Now I got 5 fingers. It means that 2 plus 3 is 5. It's a procedure that will create a rational consensus. I'm sure everyone agrees that this procedure is a good procedure for doing for solving this type of problems. But with complex problems, we have the same thing. If I have a physics problem or a theology problem, for example, everyone agreed that looking at the Bible, reading the Bible, and searching for the answer of what I want is a procedure that will create a rational consensus. Everyone will agree that the Christian God is this or is that if this is wrote on the Bible, because that's how areas of study work. But philosophy is a very peculiar one that does not have this procedure. So it's quite hard to analyze philosophical problems because we don't need just to analyze them, but we need to analyze how are we going to analyze. We need to think about what is the approaching that the philosopher is going to do and the philosophical problem, because it's not a consensus about that. So okay, we know what is philosophy, the study of these quite hard problems. But this course is not about philosophy. This course is about history of philosophy. That is very different. This is a history course, so we are going to analyze historical documents, historical facts, and in this case, the historical facts that we are analyzing are the philosophical theories. And different from normal history that you analyze political things or and this kind of stuff, in the history of philosophy, we are going to analyze the philosophical theories. So it's impartial. We're not going to say if God exists or not. We're going to study what Plato says about the existence of God. But why are we studying that? Why don't we study just philosophy? History of philosophy is very important because it gives independence for the students and it gives a great repertoire on the subject. For me to approach a philosophical problem, if I know the arguments about that along the history of philosophy, I am prepared to approach it. If I don't, it's going to be very, very harder to understand the problem and to get all the meticulous analysis that we need to deal with a philosophical problem. But it's dangerous to study history of philosophy too, because it's very common that lots of people study history of philosophy their whole life and never actually get into the philosophical problems and study them and make an opinion. It's very common here in Brazil, where I live, and it's not what I want. In my opinion, the history of philosophy is just important when it is a tool for us to make good philosophy, not just doing it on itself and never having an opinion about the philosophical problems. Not an opinion, but a theory and a serious conception. And this course is about a book that I'm reading. This book has 7 volumes. It is giant. Like here, I'm with 5 of them because I don't have the volume number 6 and number 7 since I'm in the 5th one. But until I get there, I'm going to finish the book, so it's not a problem because I'm going to start from the very beginning of the book. And this is the most complete material that I found on history of philosophy, and that's why I started reading it. I'm reading it for some time, and yeah, this book is called History of Philosophy, just that, History of Philosophy. Here I have the version in Portuguese from Giovanni Reali and Dario Anticidi. So this book was published in 2004. That is a good date. It's quite recent. It's going to get all the philosophers from the 1900s, and it's very helpful for us to understand the philosophical problems. And talking a little bit about the authors of the book, they are Giovanni Reali, that is well known for his interpretations of Plato, and he is a big admirer of ancient philosophy. He is Catholic. He is very respected in the analysis of ancient philosophy, so we are in good hands when talking about old stuff. And we have Dario Anticidi too, that his greatest works are in epistemology. He's an epistemologist, and his proposal is on unifying analytic and continental traditions of epistemology. So that's good, because when talking about the volume 6 and 7, we have the continental and analytic philosophy on contemporary philosophy, and it's good to have a neutral opinion when talking about the history of philosophy, right? Because it's an important thing when analyzing the book on itself, when analyzing just the history of philosophy. It's important to have an impartial view, and I think Dario is going to bring it to us by considering both traditions when talking about contemporary philosophy. That is the most important part of history of philosophy for us, because at contemporary philosophy we are dealing with the problems that we're discussing until today. So it's quite important. And now that we know that we are in good hands and that we have a good material as a base, we can start our course. The class number 0 finishes here. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you watch the other classes. And thank you.